Every student in the hall wore their weapons openly: fangs, claws, horns, plates of natural armor. Every student except one. The human sat unarmed, soft-skinned, and silent, as if he had wandered into a den of predators by mistake. The instructor's talons clicked against the display wall, bringing up charts filled with neat lines of data: bone density, muscle fiber resilience, redundant organs. Each species was ranked, measured, praised for its evolutionary advantages. At the very bottom, set apart in red, was a single word: human. Soft tissue, weak bones, no natural armor, the instructor said flatly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute fact. Remove their tools, and they are helpless. Evolution marked them fragile, prey. The cadets roared with laughter. A tusked warrior snapped his jaws, mimicking a human scream. Another flicked out a barbed tongue and hissed. Fragile things, they wouldn't last a heartbeat in the wild. And still the human sat quietly in the back row, hands folded, eyes steady. No protest, no defense, just silence. Because beyond the academy walls, in the forests where no cadet dared to tread, something waited. The apex predator every species feared. The hunter none of them had faced and lived to tell of. And before this lesson was over, the human would carry it into the classroom. His name was Jacob Miller. He had been born in a small farming colony orbiting a red dwarf, far from Earth but raised on stories of it. He had come to the academy on merit physical exams, tactical aptitude, survival scores. Yet in every lecture, in every whispered joke, the word fragile clung to him like a brand. Today's lesson was the worst yet. The instructor tapped a claw against the display, changing the chart. A new image appeared, a hulking beast, twice the size of any cadet. Its body was armored in overlapping scales. Its forelimbs ended in claws long enough to shear through steel plating. Its maw bristled with serrated fangs, curved for ripping flesh from bone. This, the instructor said, is the Vaethra, apex predator of the southern continent. No cadet team has returned from its hunting grounds alive. Squads of trained warriors have fallen in minutes. And a human, without weapons, would not last seconds. The room erupted again. Cadets slapped tails against the benches. Some imitated screams. Others bet how long a human would survive before being swallowed whole. One cadet, a massive reptilian with plated brows, sneered across the aisle at Jacob. "You hear that, prey? Even your screams wouldn't echo before it ended you." Jacob met his gaze for a moment, then looked back at the display. No words, no reaction. The lesson shifted from theory to assignment. The instructor's talons clicked rapidly against the console. For your survival evaluation, you will each be deployed into designated sectors of the southern forest. Your objective: endure 3 cycles. Extraction at dawn on the 4th. Excited murmurs rippled across the hall. Cadets boasted of their natural weapons, of how they would hunt lesser creatures, of how they would claim glory. But when the instructor's eyes fell on Jacob, the murmurs turned darker. "Fragile one will be the first to die. I'll give him an hour. No, less he'll break his ankle stepping on a root." The instructor's tone held no sympathy. Assignments are non-negotiable. The human will participate. His results will serve as example. Jacob only nodded once. That evening, as the cadets prepared, the difference between them and him became stark. The reptilian student sharpened his claws against stone until sparks flew. The tusked warrior polished the curve of his ivory tusks with oil. A mantis-shaped cadet tested the chittering snap of her forelimbs. Jacob's preparation was quieter. He checked the cord in his pack, tested its tension. He found a fallen branch thick enough to serve as a spear shaft and shaved it to balance. He tied knots into lengths of rope, adjusted them for snaring. He gathered stones that fit his palm. Tools, not weapons. The others laughed. He sharpens sticks like a primitive. He thinks knots will save him. Jacob ignored them. He wrapped the cord carefully, tested the sharpened point of his spear against the ground, and waited. At dawn, the transports lifted them into the southern forest. The canopy stretched high, blotting out the sun. Air hung heavy with moisture and the scent of rot. The ground trembled faintly with distant steps, steps too heavy to belong to anything but the Vaethra. The cadets dispersed, each boasting into their comms about what they would kill first. Jacob cut his comm entirely. He moved quietly, mapping his sector, marking trees, setting snares. His every step was deliberate, every sound measured. Above him, somewhere in the shadows, the predator stirred. Back at the academy, the remaining students gathered to watch the live feeds. Most expected Jacob's channel to go dark first. Bets were placed openly. Some cadets said 10 minutes, others less. No one expected the human's feed to hold. And yet, as the hours stretched on, the small display still showed him alive, quiet, focused. He was not the prey they had imagined. The southern forest swallowed sound. Even the most boisterous cadets, eager to prove themselves, had grown quieter after their first hours beneath its canopy. The air was thick, humid, clinging to skin and armor alike. Visibility dropped to only a few meters, broken by towering trunks and vines as thick as cables. Every few minutes came a sound no one mistook for wind or birdsong, a thud that carried through the earth, the slow steps of something vast. Jacob Miller crouched by a stream, rinsing his hands. The cool water stung where small cuts had already opened across his knuckles and palms. Rope burns. Splinters. He flexed his fingers to keep them from stiffening. He'd built 4 snares already, 2 for small game, 2 for anything reckless enough to charge him. He'd chosen a spear of oak-hard wood, balanced its weight, and hardened its tip over fire until it blackened and gleamed. His tools looked primitive beside the claws and fangs of his classmates, but his expression stayed steady. He wasn't building weapons to look dangerous, he was building them to work. Elsewhere, cadets boasted over their comms. "I already tore the head from a crawler," one snarled, his words wet with triumph. "Its blood tasted weak." Another laughed. "The forest bends for the strong. The human must be cowering by now." The laughter faltered when the ground itself trembled. A low rumble moved through the trees, vibrating their ribs. The sound was not thunder. It was the Vaithra's hunting call, deep enough to rattle branches loose. "Remain calm," the instructor's voice crackled over their channels. "Remember, survival until extraction. Do not engage the apex." Every cadet fell quiet after that. Every cadet, except the one who had no comm. Jacob's fire had burned down to embers when the sound reached him. A low, resonant growl felt more in the spine than heard. His body stiffened instinctively. He reached for the spear without thinking. The Vaithra moved like a landslide given muscle and breath. Its scales dragged against bark as it shifted through the undergrowth. Jacob couldn't see it yet, but the forest had gone silent. No insects, no birds, not even the whisper of leaves. He crouched lower, his breathing slowed. He had learned long ago that panic wasted oxygen, wasted strength. The first glimpse came in the form of eyes twin embers, glowing faintly in the dark. Then came the sound of claws gouging bark. The beast stepped forward, massive shoulders rolling with each stride, tail lashing like a whip. Its head lowered, jaws parting to reveal teeth curved like sickles. Jacob knew the stories. No squad had returned alive. Firepower only delayed it. But he also knew something the Academy didn't teach. Predators relied on expectation. They knew how prey fled, how prey panicked. He was not going to run. The first strike came faster than anything that size should have managed. The Vaithra lunged, claws outstretched, a blur of black scales. Jacob rolled aside, his spear braced low. The sharpened tip scraped scales and skidded away, leaving only a shallow groove. The beast roared. Pain lanced through Jacob's shoulder as a claw grazed him in the retreat. He stumbled back, nearly dropped the spear, then forced his grip tighter. His vision flashed with the sharp burn of torn muscle. He backed toward the traps he had set, step by step, blood running hot down his arm. Every breath hurt. He could already tell the wound was deep enough to need stitching if he survived. But pain wasn't new. He set his jaw and kept moving. The Vaithra advanced, confused by resistance where instinct promised weakness. Its nostrils flared, catching the scent of human blood, and it pressed harder. Jacob reached the snare line. He shifted left at the last second. The beast barreled forward, its massive leg catching the cord hidden under leaves. The ground erupted as the trap tightened, yanking the limbs sideways. For the first time, the predator stumbled. Jacob drove the spear upward into the exposed joint. Wood cracked against scale, but the angle held. He twisted, forcing the point deeper. Hot blood sprayed, thick and metallic, burning against his skin. The beast howled and tore free, the snare snapping under its weight. Jacob's spear broke in half, the shaft splintering in his grip. He staggered back, clutching the jagged end. He had wounded it but not killed it. Above, cameras hidden in the canopy relayed every second to the Academy's observation deck. Cadets crowded the monitors, expecting to see Jacob torn apart. Instead, they watched him limp into position, his arm bleeding heavily, his face pale but eyes locked with the predators. "Incredible," one of the instructors whispered. "He isn't fleeing." "He's fighting it," another said, disbelief cracking their voice. A cadet from the predator-born races hissed, her mandibles clicking nervously. "This is wrong. The Vaethra does not retreat. It does not bleed for prey." Yet the screens showed exactly that. A human standing bloodied, still facing the beast that had crushed their best squads. Jacob tightened a strip of cloth around his wound, biting down hard as the pain shot through him. He needed the arm to function, even if weakly. He tied the bandage with his teeth, pulled it tight enough to slow the bleeding, then turned his focus back to the predator. It circled now, warier. The ground trembled with each step. Jacob shifted the broken spear to his left hand, his right arm throbbing but still mobile. He raised his chin slightly. "You wanted me," he muttered under his breath. "Now, I want you." The Vaethra growled. And the hunt began again. The Vaethra circled like a living avalanche, claws carving grooves into the earth, its tail lashed, splintering trunks as thick as Jacob's chest. The beast was cautious now, its wounded leg dragging slightly, but its eyes never left him. Jacob's breath came ragged. The cloth he had tied around his shoulder was already dark with blood, but the pressure slowed the flow. He flexed his fingers to test the nerves, still responsive, though weak. He would have to ration every movement, every ounce of strength. He dragged the broken spear tip through the dirt as he moved, not to threaten, but to mark his own path. He had mapped this ground when he arrived. Every trap, every ridge, every fallen log was etched into memory. He wasn't prey lost in the forest. He was a hunter drawing his circle tighter. The Vaethra lunged again. Its roar shook the canopy, scattering flocks of winged creatures into the sky. Jacob sidestepped, his boots sliding on wet leaves. He nearly fell, but his hand caught a low branch and swung him clear of the jaws snapping shut where he had stood. Pain ripped across his ribs where a fang grazed him. His side burned, warm blood soaking through his shirt. He bit down hard, forced himself upright, and staggered into the trees. The beast followed, each step rattling the ground. Jacob led it toward the second snare, hidden under a tangle of roots. He ducked low at the last second. The Vaethra's mass slammed into the trap line. Weighted logs dropped from above, smashing across its spine. The beast shrieked, scales cracking under the impact. For the first time, Jacob heard something new. Pain, not fury. He drove forward with the jagged spear, jabbing at the exposed wound. The tip sank shallow, but enough to draw more blood. The predator whipped its tail in blind rage. The strike caught Jacob across the chest, hurling him into a tree. Something cracked in his side. White-hot agony stole his breath. He collapsed to one knee, clutching his ribs. Each inhale stabbed like knives. He knew the sensation, likely one, maybe two ribs fractured. Not life-threatening yet, but every movement would feel like fire. He pressed his back to the trunk and forced himself to stand. The world tilted, black spots swimming in his vision. He spat blood onto the ground. The Vaethra advanced again, slower now, limping but relentless. Back at the academy, cadets watched in horrified silence. What had begun as entertainment waiting for the human's death had turned into something else entirely. "He should be down," one muttered. "Those wounds, no one stands after that." An instructor checked the medical telemetry. 2 fractured ribs, deep lacerations to the shoulder and side, blood loss already critical. By all rights, he should be unconscious. Yet the screens showed Jacob standing, weapon in hand, chest heaving, eyes locked on the predator, as if daring it to come closer. The predator-born students shifted uncomfortably. One, a tusked warrior who had mocked Jacob most loudly, whispered, "Why does he keep getting up?" No one answered. Jacob limped into the third trap. This one wasn't meant to hold it, was meant to ignite. He had packed dried moss and resin at the base of a hollow trunk, set with flint stones above. As the beast pushed forward, Jacob snapped a rock against the trigger line. Flames roared up in an instant, searing the air. The Vaethra shrieked, rearing back as fire licked across its scaled hide. Smoke filled the clearing, choking and hot. Jacob seized the chance. He drove the broken spear into the predator's mouth as it bellowed, jamming it between upper and lower jaws. The wood cracked but held long enough to wedge the beast's bite open. The predator thrashed, slamming Jacob against the ground. His head struck stone, vision flashing white. For a terrifying second, the world blurred. He tasted copper. He forced himself awake, clawing at the dirt until his senses sharpened again. He ripped a shard of stone from the ground, sharp as glass, and drove it into the soft tissue of the beast's throat. The predator roared, blood spraying hot across his face. It convulsed, tearing free from the spear, staggering backward. Jacob collapsed onto his side, gasping, every rib screaming with pain. His hands shook violently, slick with blood that was both his and not his. The predator tried to retreat, gurgling, its chest heaving. Jacob rolled onto his knees, picked up the rope from his pack with trembling fingers, and staggered after it. He wasn't done. The final trap was the simplest: leverage. He had looped a heavy rope between two bent saplings. As the predator stumbled past, Jacob yanked the release with his last strength. The trees snapped upright, cords twisting tight around its neck. The Vaithra reared, clawing, thrashing against the snare. The cords cut deeper with every movement. Its roars turned into choked gurgles. Jacob climbed onto its back, ribs screaming, vision swimming. He wrapped his arms around its neck, using his body as the final anchor, and pulled with everything he had left. The beast's claws raked his legs, slicing muscle. His arms trembled, nearly slipping, but he held, teeth bared, pulling until the cords bit through scale and flesh. The thrashing slowed, the roars broke into shuddering gasps. And then, at last, the forest fell silent again. Jacob rolled off the carcass, collapsing beside it. His chest heaved, every breath fire. His body was a map of blood and bruises, ribs cracked, shoulder torn, legs shredded. He pressed a trembling hand to his chest, checked his pulse, fast but steady. He was alive. For a long time, he lay still, staring at the canopy above. Then he dragged himself upright, using the beast's body as leverage. He tied ropes around its limbs, slow and methodical, ignoring the screaming pain of his broken ribs. And inch by inch, step by step, he began to drag it toward the academy. The academy lecture hall buzzed with noise the next morning. Most of the cadets had already returned from the southern forest, battered but intact. A few had failed extraction entirely, their signals recovered from shallow graves left by lesser predators. Yet, the atmosphere wasn't one of mourning. It was of laughter, jeers, and cruel anticipation. "The human's feed cut hours ago," one cadet sneered. "Probably swallowed whole. Or broke his bones tripping on roots," another said, tapping claws against the desk. "Fragile thing never had a chance," a reptilian cadet added. "The Vaithra doesn't leave scraps." Even the instructor joined in, talons clicking across the console. This was inevitable. I assigned him to demonstrate the limits of fragility. Nature itself has proven the point. Humans are prey, and prey do not graduate from this academy. The laughter swelled. Cadets mimicked screams, gnashing jaws, the crunch of breaking bones. Then, the hall doors groaned. Every voice cut off. The doors slammed open with a sound like a thunderclap. And Jacob Miller walked in. He was drenched in blood, his shirt torn and plastered to his chest. Bandages of rough cloth wrapped his shoulder and side, soaked through but holding. His legs bore long gashes that leaked with every step, yet he walked upright, dragging something massive behind him. The sound of claws scraping against stone echoed through the hall as the body followed. The Vaithra. Its scaled bulk stretched the length of the aisle, gouging deep scars in the floor. Its jaws hung slack, serrated teeth glistening wet. Its throat bore the deep, twisted marks of rope and human arms. Blood still dripped fresh from the wound, steaming faintly in the cold air. The cadets froze, eyes wide, throats tight. Jacob kept walking until he reached the front of the hall. He didn't look at them, didn't smile, didn't boast. He only gripped the cords one last time and let the beast's body fall with a crash that shook the floor. The silence that followed was heavier than the carcass itself. The instructor's talons twitched against the desk. His voice cracked. This is impossible." Jacob turned his head slowly, his eyes steady despite the blood on his face. You said no one returned from its hunting grounds. He lifted his torn shirt enough to reveal the bruising across his ribs, the blood-soaked bandages. You were almost right. No one dared laugh now. The tusked cadet who had mocked him most loudly sank lower in his seat, unable to meet his gaze. Predator-born students with claws and armor bowed their heads, the weight of shame pressing them quiet. The Vaethra's eyes still faintly glowed, its body not yet cold. Jacob had not dragged back some ancient kill. He had brought it fresh, killed within the hour, carried on broken ribs and shredded muscles. Fragile things did not do that. Medics rushed forward, horrified at his state. They pressed scanners against his chest, whispering rapidly. 2 fractured ribs, at least. Lacerations to both thighs, deep but not severed. Blood loss critical, his pressure should have dropped him unconscious hours ago. Jacob shrugged their hands off gently. I'll sit for treatment after this. The instructor finally found his voice. How did you do this? Jacob looked down at the carcass. His reply was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the hall. It was hunting me, so I hunted it back. The words rippled through the cadets like a cold wind. Simple, unadorned, not pride, not arrogance, just fact. And, in that moment, the lesson reversed. The charts on the wall meant nothing. Bone density, armor, fangs all useless against the one truth staring them in the face. Humans made strategy out of fear, weapons out of desperation, and hunters out of prey. For weeks afterward, the Academy spoke of nothing else. The Vaethra's carcass was dissected and catalogued, but no one remembered the lab reports. They remembered the sight of a bloodied human, dragging it into class. Some cadets still whispered fragile when they saw Jacob limp past with his ribs bound tight, but their voices lacked laughter. The word no longer carried scorn. It carried unease, respect, and something closer to fear. The predator-born students trained harder, claws sharper, voices quieter. The tusked warrior avoided Jacob's gaze entirely. Even instructors spoke more carefully, their lectures edged with the memory of that morning. Jacob spent weeks in recovery. He submitted to the medics, who insisted on proper healing. The fracture tests showed 2 ribs cracked through, one displaced but realigned. The lacerations in his thighs had missed major vessels by luck more than design. He'd lost enough blood to require transfusions. Infection was the greatest risk, but antibiotics, fluid therapy, and rest carried him through. He did not rush his return to training. Broken bones needed 6 weeks minimum before strain. Torn muscles needed months before full strength. He followed the regimen, grimly patient, knowing that true survival was not only the kill, but the discipline afterward. And when he walked back into drills, scars lined his arms and legs, but his stride was steady. On the final day of the term, the instructor who had once called him prey addressed the class. His voice lacked its former arrogance. Strength is not measured only in armor or claws. We have all witnessed proof of that. Fragility, when paired with will, is not weakness, it is adaptability. And adaptability is the one trait that outlives every predator. His gaze fell on Jacob. Remember this lesson. The galaxy may laugh at humans. Let them. But when the day comes, they will not laugh twice. Jacob never told the cadets how close he had come to death, how many times his vision had blurred, how every breath had felt like fire. He never explained the hours of crawling, the taste of blood in his mouth, or the exhaustion that nearly killed him as much as the beast had. He didn't need to. Because in the hall, on that morning, he had carried proof heavier than words. Fragile? Perhaps. But fragile things do not carry their nightmares into classrooms. And from that day on, no one at the Academy dared forget that humans don't just survive their hunters. They hunt them back.